Last Friday, a Florida man died after being exposed to inhaled anthrax. This was the first known fatality from inhaled anthrax in the United States in over 20 years. Today, a co-worker of that man who died was found to have been exposed to anthrax, and additional anthrax bacteria were found on the keyboard of a computer where the two men worked. We turn now to Kyle Olson, who advises state and local governments on biological and chemical terrorism. And Kyle, if you would explain, first of all, what the difference is between inhaled anthrax and natural anthrax.
Well, they're both natural. The difference being that typically anthrax is a disease of the skin. People get it from working with hides or with wool. It comes from animals in nature, and it's commonly a problem for people involved in tannery or leather.
And what is so rare then about the inhaled form?
Well, the inhaled form is the product of spores getting into the lungs, and frankly, the spores that cause this disease are not naturally found in the air. They're not found in the kinds of concentrations that would cause this disease. The key distinction being natural or cutaneous anthrax on the skin is generally not fatal. Inhalational anthrax is fatal in over 80% of the cases.
Why is it that you believe the chance of this having happened accidentally is so remote?
We had one case of inhalational anthrax back in the mid-70s. Since then, nothing. Now, all of a sudden, we have a cluster of two in the same building in less than a week and a half. The odds of that happening are really very, very remote, to the point of vanishing. Moreover, the evidence that I'm seeing right now, or hearing from people that are doing investigations, show that it's not just on keyboards but on other surfaces in that building. Not the kind of thing you're going to find as far as a natural place to find anthrax in any case.
What does it suggest to you? In other words, how would it have been delivered?
Well, there's been some speculation it might have come in a package through the mailroom or something like that. I think it's more likely that we're going to be seeing some sort of use of the ventilation or air conditioning system in that building. A delivery perhaps through the air intakes of the building, then moving through the building with cooling air.
I thought the spores just died or lost their power to infect after a given time.
No, actually, anthrax spores are incredibly hardy. Unlike a lot of other biological organisms, once they go into the spore form, they are resistant to sunlight, they're resistant to heat. In essence, they go into spore form so that they can ride out bad environmental conditions. In their spore form, they're almost indestructible.
There is no reason, is there, to naturally assume that this was done by some terrorist group?
You know, the key here is that this could have been done by another individual or a group of individuals who are trying to take advantage of the focus on Osama bin Laden and Al-Qaeda. On the other hand, we certainly can't, nor should we, rule out that this is linked to that particular conflict.
Very quickly, Kyle, how difficult is it to prepare spores of the kind that you could send by mail or get into a building through the ventilation system?
For an individual to do it on his own, very difficult. For someone with the resources of, for example, a state sponsor or a large, wealthy organization, it would be just a matter of time.
So that does seem to mitigate against the odd individual.
I'm doubtful we've got a lone gunman.
All right, Kyle Olson, thanks very much indeed.
Thanks, Ted.
All over the country today, law enforcement and civic leaders grappled with how to defend against an unknown threat. They tried to think like terrorists and to put into place some kind of protection. From Los Angeles now, here's Judy Muller.
Along with the rest of the country, Los Angeles is on high alert. Early this morning, concrete barricades were hurriedly put in place around City Hall and police headquarters, part of an effort to deter terrorist attacks.
We have some very visible symbols, and as we say in law enforcement, we're a target-rich environment.
We have performing arts theaters, we have Universal Studios, Disneyland, and because of that threat, we've been on a heightened alert and continue to remain there.
The sheriff showed us around the Emergency Operations Center for LA and Orange counties, a bomb-proof building in an undisclosed location. So tell me who sits in this inner circle during an emergency.
This inner circle is made up of the managers of any crisis, disaster, or terrorist attack.
The County Operations Center is linked by state-of-the-art technology with the city's operations unit.
Every city department is here, fire department, you have airports, animal regulation, building.
This afternoon, the chief convened an emergency meeting of those officials who essentially serve as a municipal joint chiefs of staff for an update on security.
I'm very pleased to report that all is going smoothly at LAX.
Airport officials plan to extend restrictions on ways passengers can be dropped off at terminals and hope to deploy more National Guard troops. The Department of Water and Power is testing water supplies daily now rather than weekly. The police department has officers on 12-hour shifts, despite the fact there have been no credible threats. And all ships entering the port of Los Angeles are being searched. Like many other U.S. cities, downtown L.A. is now a maze of barriers, police cars, and tow-away signs, especially around government buildings. So that even as Americans are being urged to get back to business as usual, they are surrounded by very real reminders of these most unusual times. These precautions are meant to create a feeling of safety, and yet no one underestimates the terrorists' advantage of surprise. It strikes me that you've got all of this planning, all of this preparation, and yet, when it comes right down to it, you have no idea where, when, and who.
We think that we have some indicators. That's why we have the early warning terrorism group that tells us in advance what are the clues, what are the lead-up information when something of a terrorist act will occur.
The Terrorism Early Warning Group is an interagency task force that provides LA law enforcement with federal and international intelligence on terrorists, including bin Laden.
The question is, what is his objective now? Where will he and his allies attack next? What are they trying to do at this phase of their operation, because this is a long-term event, and what can we do to counter that?
Good question. The sheriff seems confident that everything that can be done is being done.
Whether it's a person taking hostages with dynamite wrapped around him, whether it's a person thinking they can hijack airplanes, whether it's an individual who thinks they can throw chemical agents into the air and cause massive amounts of injuries, we have all of the various skilled individuals that are necessary to go out, deploy, intervene, intercept.
Terrorist threats are not the only concern. Threats against Arabs are on the increase, including owners of 7-Eleven convenience stores.
I asked all of the police departments as well as sheriff stations to make contacts with the owners and to give extra patrol checks, and so we've been doing that.
At the same time, law enforcement is encouraging citizens to report suspicious activity, to act as the eyes and ears for police.
Many of those calls might be erroneous calls, but we shouldn't stop calling, because the one you don't call on will be the very one that we're all concerned about.
Parks believes Americans must adapt to a new reality, one that requires constant vigilance.
But it requires the city and its population to continue to be cooperative and understand they're going to be inconvenienced for a long period of time.
For a long period of time?
I think what we knew as normal September the 10th, we'll never get back to that level of normalcy.
LA officials are talking about deactivating the operations center by week's end if no terrorist attack occurs. But that if has taken up residence in our emotional landscape, high alert or not. I'm Judy Muller for Nightline in Los Angeles.
Aboard an aircraft carrier in the Indian Ocean are more than 5,500 crew members, all focused on one thing: tonight's attack against Afghanistan. A report from that carrier when we come back.